A massive SOS sign appearing out of nowhere and entire groups disappearing off the face of the earth. Wilderness has a way of swallowing people whole. But what happened in July 1989 was downright chilling. Two hikers from Tokyo went missing in the mountains of Hokkaido, Japan, and a police helicopter was dispatched to scan the rugged terrain. During the search, the crew spotted something strange: white birch logs laid out on the ground. It was far from the usual trail, sitting quietly near a river. At first, it seemed like a hopeful sign. Maybe the lost hikers made it, but when they were found alive 3 kilometers away, they had no idea what the sign was. That's when things got serious. The next morning, police returned to the SOS location. What they found confirmed their worst fear: human remains and a backpack. Inside the bag, they found a few everyday items, a tape recorder, and photo ID of Kenji Umara, a 25-year-old company worker from Aichi Prefecture. The original search for Kenji back then even used a helicopter. Investigators thought it's possible he saw it and made the sign in a last-ditch effort to be saved. What they found strange was how inside the backpack were other tapes, recordings of anime theme songs and decorated cases. Some even linked his SOS sign to a similar scene in Astro Boy, meaning whoever the stuff belonged to was a big anime fan. One of the tapes had the haunting voice of a man screaming for help, syllable by syllable, like he was trying to be heard over the roar of a helicopter. The tape also included a plea to be rescued by helicopter, clear proof that he was stranded and desperate. But when the recording was played for Kenji's parents, they said it wasn't his voice, and that made things a lot stranger because to this day, no one knows who made those recordings. But whoever it was, if he was strong enough to drag around heavy birch logs and build a massive sign, why didn't he just walk to safety? There were trails nearby, and why did he say he was stuck on a cliff when the area where the recordings were found was mostly flat? But the biggest mystery still remains. Who made these recordings? What happened to Kenji? Did he get lost after mistaking one trail for another? Or was something more sinister involved? We may never know the full story, but one thing is certain: this wasn't just a missing person case. It was a haunting mystery that left behind a voice, a sign, and more questions than answers.
Things like alien abduction, that they were attacked by Yetis. It's this huge mystery that's obsessed Russia for decades.
In early 1959, 9 experienced hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out on a skiing expedition deep in the snowy mountains of Soviet Russia. Their goal was to reach Otterten, a remote peak in the northern Urals, but they never made it. Weeks later, search teams found their abandoned tent torn open from the inside. It was still full of supplies, but the group was gone. What followed was a series of discoveries that made no sense at all. The hikers were eventually discovered lifeless, some barefoot in the snow despite freezing temperatures. 2 were found near a small campfire. Others looked like they had tried to make it back to the tent. But the last 4, found much later, left everyone puzzled. The way they were found didn't make any sense.
They were similar to the kinds of injuries that you would have if you're involved in a car accident. So a huge amount of force against the chest. And these were extraordinarily puzzling for the investigators. They couldn't understand why.
Yet, strangely, there were no signs of a struggle. Their clothes also had traces of radioactive substances. Soviet investigators referred to the incident as the result of a strong natural force and quickly closed the case. Over the years, theories have circulated regarding the incident: military testing, a secret weapon, an avalanche, or maybe even aliens.
It's spawned a huge number of conspiracy theories. I think something like 75 in all, including things like alien abduction, that they were attacked by Yetis.
Some believed the hikers were scared out of their minds by something, ripping their way out of the tent and running into the dark without even grabbing their shoes. To this day, no one truly knows what happened on that mountain, but what is clear is that something terrified 9 people so badly they chose freezing wilderness over staying inside their tent.
The entire slab moves almost instantaneously. As it races down the slope, it breaks into large blocks. At its actual speed, it becomes evident why the wind slab is called the Big Killer.
In 2014, 2 Dutch students, Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, set off on what should have been a fun hiking trip near Boquete, Panama. They were young, adventurous, and eager to explore the rainforest trails. They left their host family's house on April 1st and never returned. At first, it seemed like a case of hikers getting lost, but things quickly spiraled into something much darker. After days of silence, search teams combed the area. No sign of the girls until 10 weeks later, when a local woman handed in a backpack she found by the river. Inside were both their phones, a pair of sunglasses, some cash, and a digital camera. When investigators looked through it, they found dozens of photos taken on the day of the hike. At first, they were normal sightseeing shots. Then, after night fell, over 90 photos were taken in complete darkness, deep in the jungle. Some looked like random flashes. One showed a twig with plastic wrapped around it. Another had what seemed like blood. And then, nothing. Phone records showed multiple failed attempts to call emergency services, starting just hours after their hike began. One of the phones was turned on and off over the following days, possibly by the girls trying to conserve battery, or maybe someone else entirely. Eventually, remains were found, along with a few scattered belongings, like a single boot and some small personal items. Experts thought something bad might have happened to Chris, but nothing was certain. In the end, only a small portion of what they were looking for was ever recovered. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened. Did they fall? Get lost? Was someone else out there? The camera, the calls, the eerie nighttime photos, they've all kept this case firmly in the world of mystery. In 1993, a group of 7 hikers led by an experienced guide named Lyudmila Korovina set off into the Kamar-Daban mountain range in southern Siberia. They were well prepared, physically fit, and used to the tough terrain. Nothing about this trip seemed risky until everything went horribly wrong. Days later, one member of the group, Valentina Utochenko, stumbled out of the mountains alone. Exhausted, traumatized, and barely able to speak, she told a story that no one could make sense of. She said the group had stopped to rest near a river when one of the hikers suddenly fell ill. Then the others started acting strangely, panicking, running around, and clearly not feeling well. In just a few minutes, several of them were in serious trouble, and the peaceful trip had turned into something no one could explain. Only Valentina survived, and she ran blindly through the forest for days before finding help. When rescue teams reached the site, the scene matched her story. Everything they found on the scene, no one could figure out what had really happened to them or what they had encountered. Autopsy reports mentioned signs of hypothermia, but they didn't fully match the unusual symptoms Valentina described. Experts have suggested various possibilities like exposure to certain plants, contaminated water, altitude effects, or even environmental pollutants. But every theory seemed to hit a wall. There were no traces of toxins, no evidence of foul play, and Valentina's version of events never changed. 3 decades later, the case is still open-ended. No one knows what hit them out there. The Kamar-Daban mountains remain quiet, but they're far from forgotten. In February 1978, 5 young men from Yuba County, California, Gary Mathias, Ted Wire, Bill Sterling, Jack Madruga, and Jackie Hewitt piled into a car to watch a college basketball game. They never came back. The next day, their car was found abandoned on a remote mountain road, far off their expected route. It wasn't broken down. It had gas. It was just sitting there, doors unlocked, keys gone, and no sign of the men. Then came the search. Nothing turned up for months, until the snow melted. That's when the mystery deepened. Ted Wire was found inside a Forest Service trailer nearly 20 miles from where their car had been left. Surprisingly, the trailer had supplies and blankets, but none appeared to have been used. Records suggest he may have stayed there for weeks. Strangely, he was wearing clothes that belonged to another member of the group. Later, traces linked to some of the group were found scattered in different parts of the forest, each discovery adding more questions than answers. One was found not far from the trailer, and another at a greater distance. But the biggest mystery of all? Gary Mathias, the fifth member, was never found, and his fate remains one of the case's most puzzling elements. What makes this so strange is that none of them were survivalists. Some had mild intellectual disabilities and they depended on routine. So why leave the safety of the car? Why venture so deep into the snowy wilderness without any supplies? And how did Ted, despite having access to food and shelter, still not survive? Investigators never found any signs of foul play. To this day, the Yuba County Five remain one of California's most chilling unsolved mysteries.